An archaeologist once hired some Inca tribesmen to lead him to an archaeological site deep in the mountains. Perhaps you've heard the story from the movie Beyond the Clouds. After they had been moving for some time, the tribesmen stopped and insisted they would go no further. The archaeologist grew impatient and then angry, but no matter how much he cajoled, the tribesmen would not go any further. Then all of a sudden, the tribesmen changed their attitude. They picked up the gear and set off once more. When the bewildered archaeologist asked why they had stopped and refused to move for so long, the tribesmen answered, "We had been moving too fast and had to wait for our souls to catch up." I felt a bit like those tribesmen at the end of the church year last summer. I'd been given an amazing opportunity to join that July a first ever pilgrimage of Unitarian ministers from North America to Transylvania. The region of Transylvania is in present-day Romania, and as you may know, Unitarians there have practiced a free faith going back 450 years. As a busy church year here at Westside came to a close in June, the tasks of preparing for this trip added further to my flurry of year-end activities. I wondered in tired moments if I actually had the stamina for this journey. Had it been a good idea to say yes to this opportunity? Would I be a pilgrim or merely a weary traveler, a nomad? Recall Mark Nepo's words. To journey without being changed is to be a nomad. To change without journeying is to be a chameleon. To journey and to be transformed by the journey is to be a pilgrim. I wasn't quite sure what I was looking for, but I had said yes to this journey to Transylvania, so I would go. French athlete Surya Bonali, on the other hand, had a clear goal in mind as she launched into a journey of her own as an aspiring athlete. The young gymnast turned figure skater quickly won many competitive awards, and France pinned high hopes on her when they first sent her to the Olympics in 1992. She knew how she wanted to approach the sport, but whether the skating world was ready for someone like her, a powerful athlete with a muscular black body and colorful costumes, remained to be seen. Surya pushed the envelope with backflips and quadruple jumps. She wouldn't hold back, even when it cost her her expert coach. Surya would be Surya. She knew who she was and how she wanted to skate. She did work to bring more of what the judges called grace and artistry to her skating, but she kept up the gymnastics on ice that distinguished her from her peers. Before her competitive career was over, Surya had won the European Championships 5 times. But 3 stints in the Olympics yielded no medals. Some commentators today acknowledge that cultural bias in the sport arguably worked against her. Was she disheartened? Sure. You could see that at the 1994 World Championships, when she tied with Yuka Sato for the top score, but in the 5-4 decision was awarded the silver. Surya thought she deserved the gold, and she took off her silver medal after it was presented to her. Was that the end of her journey? Heck no. Surya did what she loved as she felt drawn to do it, and a gold medal, win or lose, was not the end of the line for her. She turned pro, and for over 10 years dazzled audiences with her moves on the ice. You could see the joy in her face and her body as she skated for those who truly appreciated what she offered. They loved every one of her famous backflips. For Surya Bonali, the change in the journey came in the form of growing trust in her own gifts and voice. When she had her heart set on winning competitions, Surya was focused on the kind of clear goal that many young people feel they ought to have for their lives. But this is not the only way to begin the journey of adulthood. Earlier this decade, as spring drew on, as it does now, New York Times columnist David Brooks penned some sage advice to those about to graduate. In a column titled, "It's Not All About You," he invited readers to consider which comes first, the fully formed self or the needs they will seek to serve with their life. Most successful young people, Brooks observes, don't look inside and then plan a life. They look outside and find a problem which summons their life. Most people, he says, don't form a self and then lead a life. They are called by a problem, and the self is constructed gradually by their calling. The journey of vocation, Brooks is saying, is a pilgrimage. Its very nature is to change the person doing it, to help us along in our becoming. Few journeys in my own life have been as rich as the journey of raising a child. The path of growing up is paved with big milestones like birthdays, first words, and all those teeth put under the pillow for the tooth fairy. The loving grown-ups around a child may retain sharper memories of many of these way stations than the youngster does. It's hard to imagine the adult who would fit Mark Nepo's definition of a chameleon when raising a child. A chameleon, remember, is someone who changes without journeying. It's hard for me, anyway, to imagine changing only on the outside. Gray hair, lost sleep, a few extra pounds, but not on the inside. Not being changed by this relationship with another being, by the awe and mystery of watching another person change and grow like stop-motion photography before your very eyes. I took a literal journey as a parent while on staycation over spring break, driving to IKEA in Grand Prairie to buy some bunk beds. Our daughter's old bed had broken, and it was time to reassess what would work well in her room. Bunk beds were the answer to making sleepovers more workable, and even created another fun spot to read or relax up on that top bunk. The project turned out to be bigger than I thought. First, I had to sort through all the clothes in the drawers built under her old bed, switching out new sizes she had grown into for old clothes that we gave away. Then I found someone else who had the skill and the will to repair the old bed so it could still do some good. I also used this opportunity to have our 9-year-old go through her toy cubbies and bookshelves, decluttering and identifying books and toys she has outgrown, which I took to Goodwill. Meanwhile, I spent hours assembling the bunks. My body reminded me by the aches and pains the next several days that my child is not the only one progressing through the human life cycle. My daughter and I shared a fair amount of nostalgia over these several days. It amazes me how much nostalgia a little person can have. All of the objects we parted with, the old bed, the play medical kit, the favorite dress she's outgrown, were soaked in memories and stories. And her room now looks like a bigger kid's room, a visible symbol of her growing up. Our pilgrimage as a family, being changed inside and out by this journey together. In the Time for All Ages, we heard about Toribio Kamada, who founded the Universalist Church of the Philippines. He was a pilgrim too. He set out on a journey with more questions than answers. Questions about the Bible and religion and life. A curiosity, I think, is often a sign that someone is ready to be transformed by the journey. The one thing Kimada was sure of was that love, universal love, is the heart of religion. Francis David is another figure in our Unitarian and Universalist history who was on a grand quest. David was after the truth, and like Quimada, he surely didn't know where it would all lead when he started down the path. David was neither nomad nor chameleon, but a true pilgrim, ready to be changed by the journey. Francis David grew up Catholic in Kolozsvár, Transylvania. After studying in Wittenberg, Germany, he returned to Kolozsvár and served as the first bishop of the Lutheran tradition in that area. When his theology evolved again, he became the first bishop of Calvinism there. But issues around God and Jesus pushed him away. Later, he became the first bishop of the anti-Trinitarians, or as the newest Protestant upstarts came to be called, the Unitarians. You may recall that David not only espoused new Unitarian ideas like Ege as Ishten, God is one, but also urged King Sigismund not to impose religion on his people. Even when the king converted personally to Unitarianism, David urged him to recognize multiple religious traditions as legitimate for his subjects to practice and to offer them religious freedom, rather than forcing them all to convert to his own chosen faith. The Edict of Torda, whose 450th anniversary we celebrated last year, was the piece of legislation that expressed this idea of religious freedom in Europe for the first time. Because he was willing to be changed in his quest for truth, to be transformed again and again, Francis David changed the world around him as well. Surya Bonali, the Black French figure skater, showed a similar fidelity to her athletic gifts and sense of self, as David did to his sense of truth in his theological search. She was a force for change too. The world of professional skating is broader today than it was when she competed because she was true to herself. Bonali has inspired countless Black girls to pursue skating and make the sport their own, including through her work with the organization Figure Skating in Harlem. Those young skaters are among the beneficiaries of Surya Bonali's journey. We present-day Unitarian Universalists, of course, are among the inheritors of Francis David's legacy. His ideas of the unity of the divine and of the nature of faith itself as a divine gift that must be respected and not imposed on people, these ideas took hold. They live on. David's life, though, was cut short because of his loyalty to the truth as he understood it. At the end of the Transylvania pilgrimage I participated in, we visited the very site where he died for these commitments. Some of you have heard me share in other services how the pilgrimage brought me renewal in the present moment, new friendship, and contact with beauty and history. Today I want to tell you about the culminating moment of the trip, when I felt myself to have been changed by the journey. This was in the city of Deva, almost at the end of the pilgrimage. We had seen so much already by then. I had touched the rock on which David stood when he presented his new Unitarian ideas before the Diet, or legislative assembly, that King Sigismund had convened in 1568. This famous stone remains at the Unitarian Church in Kolozsvár. By the time our group of North American pilgrims reached Deva, we had gotten to know Hungarian Unitarian colleagues who traced their religious roots directly to David. We had participated in several celebrations of the 450th anniversary at the Kolozsvár Church, at the headquarters of Hungarian Unitarianism, and at the newly dedicated House of Religious Freedom. We had traveled to a mountain village and listened to the Hungarian minister there offer a moving sermon in English just for us. A cool historical fact, it turns out a delegation of American Unitarians had visited this very same church exactly 150 years before us, celebrating the 300th anniversary of the Edict of Torda. We had been to the city of Torda itself, seeing the newly dedicated monument to these events, and visiting the museum that chronicled the city's history. This famous 19th century painting of David's oration is one of its most popular exhibits. We had visited multiple Unitarian churches in different villages and cities, places where a majority of the population is Unitarian. And we visited several Unitarian high schools where Unitarian theology is built into the curriculum. Unitarianism is seriously institutionalized in a way that's hard for an American to relate to, a reflection of how deeply Francis David's innovative theology had influenced large groups of people in Transylvania. Now, with the closing of the trip, we would see where David was imprisoned after King Sigismund fell from power. Under the new Catholic ruler, not inclined toward religious freedom, this dangerous new precedent was rolled back. David was thrown into a cell where he was subject to such inhuman conditions that he died after only a few months. The long bus ride to Deva gave us a chance to let our souls catch up with us. Once in Deva, we visited something unusual in Transylvania, a contemporary, recently built Unitarian church on the left there. It's pastored by our tour guide, Zoltan Attila Kapandi, or Zoli for short. We shared worship and a potluck with his congregation at a country manor before visiting the historic attraction in this city. It was finally time to see the citadel where Francis David was martyred. The citadel is built onto a hill, so when we arrived and got off the bus, the next step in our adventure was to take something called a funicular up the hill. Now, if heights make you queasy, you just keep your eyes looking up at where it's going. At the top are beautiful vistas from every side of the citadel. We round around the hill until we came to a gate that kept most visitors from entering the inner part of the citadel. Zoli had gotten special permission from officials for our delegation to enter this Unitarian holy site. Still, it felt kind of clandestine as our group leaders removed the lock and heaved their weight into the gate to get it up and open for us. We walked into a sun-filled inner courtyard. Blue sky peered through openings in the stone walls, and I had the feeling of stepping back in time. We could see several rooms here at the top of this law and order fortress where prisoners would have been kept. The small cell that held Francis David is fully intact, and like the gate, was locked. But again, Zoli was able to let us into this site where Unitarians throughout Transylvania make pilgrimage each year. The wreaths on the stone marker, each from a different church, are evidence of the rituals of remembrance that faithful Unitarians in Transylvania have carried out. Our small group stepped out of the sun into the dark room and circled the memorial stone in the cold, damp cell. Zoli led us in a brief Vespers service, honoring the legacy of faith and freedom that Francis David bequeathed to us. Then Zoli sang a beloved Hungarian Unitarian song. He gave permission for it to be shared, so we'll play it for you now.
We can be Unitarians and we can spread still the teachings and our beliefs. So, the song, sorry, I forget it. Vagyunk hálát minnyájan, arra szívvel vidámon, a felettünk valónak, az egyetlen egy Istennek, aki egybe gyűjtött minket, hogy ünnepnapot szenteljünk, és
Our Unitarian Universalist faith in North America is fairly young as religions go. But here on this archaic citadel, where our own martyr clung to the truth of the unity of all and the free gift of faith, I felt a part of something much deeper, with more deeper roots in human history and consciousness. I was overcome with emotion. Shivers went down my spine as we all fell silent before this historic marker of a deep and abiding commitment that Francis David expressed in his life and in his death. On top of that hill in Deva, in that grim cell, I felt rooted in something ancient, primal, true, and good. I understood in a new way the importance of the Unitarian presence and message in any place that is threatened by tyranny. Any place where differences are seen as a cause for alarm and condemnation, rather than as a free gift of God. There may have been moments on the Transylvania trip when I felt more like a nomad than a pilgrim, wandering from place to place and just taking it all in. But by this moment in the trip, I was unequivocally a pilgrim. To journey without being changed is to be a nomad, Nepo wrote. To change without journeying is to be a chameleon. To journey and to be transformed by the journey is to be a pilgrim. As I look out at the many faces in this room, I know there must be so many longings in your hearts, so many adventures ahead of you. From growing up and gold medal dreams to parenting and pilgrim visits to special places, whatever journeys you undertake, may you remain open to the gifts that await you. May each one of us be ready to be transformed by what we experience, and perhaps even to share with the world the gifts we gain on the journey. May it be so. Amen.